We'll talk about that.
It's quite poor. Hello there, welcome to the channel. My name is Ian. This channel is all about music and art, and I tend to put a video out every Monday if I can. And this time I want to tell you a little story, and it's something that's never happened before to me, and I've been playing live for too many years now, I can remember really. So I recently did an EMOM, and that was about an hour and a half away from here, which was in Bournemouth. Fantastic night. And if you don't know what an EMOM is, it's electronic open mic night. So the way that usually happens is sometimes you can turn up on the night and you'll get a 15-minute slot, something like that. But generally what happens is you sign up and they try and fit as many people in as possible. And I've been playing EMOMs certainly for the last, well, before the pandemic, so the last 4 or 5 years. Never played Bournemouth before. In fact, it's only the second time in my life I've ever been to Bournemouth. The first time was in 1985, playing in a pro band. Went down to Bournemouth to a place called Bonner's and bought a Korg DW6000 synthesizer, and then drove all the way back to Yorkshire. So I'm in Bournemouth for this EMOM. The guys who ran it, absolutely brilliant. And here, this is pretty, I've just laid out the stuff that I actually played with. So what I did, I've got a Zoom, and I'll take a photograph so you can see it close up. So I've got a Zoom live track L6, which everything's going into. I'm using it as a mixer and a recorder. So I've recorded the set, and I use I've created a couple of samples. One is sort of glitchy sort of sound sample, and the other one is some drums that I bring in later on in the set. We've got an organelle, which is basically, plug it. It's a drum computer, and I'm using it runs on Pure Data patches, and I've never created anything in Pure Data. I've done stuff in Max MSP, but I need to get around to it at some point. Anyway, there's a whole load of patches that people in the community have made, and one guy, can't remember his name now, but he made a fantastic sort of wonky piano, which I absolutely love, and I've used it on a lot of my stuff. So I'm playing the wonky piano on the organelle. I've got an iPad which is running 2 synths. One is a sort of generative ambient synth called Mood Scraper. Now I have that in a generative mode, so it sort of generates, I don't use it for the whole thing, but certainly for sections of it, I bring it in and bring it out. So we've got Mood Scraper going on, and we've also got the usual app that I use for the Linstrument, which is GeoShred. Now I use GeoShred with some sampled either brass or woodwind, those type of sounds. So they're pretty accurate samples. I sometimes use more synthy stuff, but I like to move things around and do sort of things differently with that. And that's where the problem is with this particular set. So I start the set, and I'm I seem to think it's about 5 or 6 minutes in. I mean, I haven't seen any video footage of the set yet, so if there is some, I will include it by the time I release this video. And what happens to GeoShred fairly regularly is that it crashes. Usually you sort of get a blip, then there's no sound out of it, it stops working to the instrument, and I have to close it down and restart it. Now that takes a few seconds, but if you're aware that that happens and you've got other things going on, I can usually work around it. Okay, so it happens. like I say, probably about 5 or 6 minutes in, it happens, and I close it down, reopen it, and lo and behold, GeoShred starts to update itself. Now, I hadn't connected to Wi-Fi on the iPad. I had no need to. Luckily, I'm using my phone as a timer, and usually what happens is the minute the iPad, I want Wi-Fi, if I need a Wi-Fi hotspot, my phone is it. So I'm thinking, right, okay, what can I do? I'm not going to wait for GeoShred to finish. I'm in the middle of a gig. So there is another app that I do use for MPE type instrument stuff, and that is the Seaboard 5D, which is a cut down version of Rolly Seaboard's Equator synth, and I thought, right, I'm going to use that because I've used it before. So because I was using sort of fluty sound, I looked for the flute sound on the Seaboard 5D app and started using that, and so continued the gig. And I thought, well, I'll have a look at see what's happening with the GeoShred, after when I get to the next section, because I tend to break my sets down into sections. It's one long continuous piece of music, but I want something to happen, say I sometimes pick different times, but I would maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. I would change something or make something else happen, so it's not the same all the way through. Anyway, I'm playing happily away on the instrument and using the organelle and everything else. And then I look, and GeoShred has updated itself because it's automatically connected to the Wi-Fi on my phone. So I'm able to move back from the Seaboard app to GeoShred and continue the rest of the gig. And I think, let me know if you've ever had this situation. That's the first time I've ever had software update itself while I'm actually using it at a gig. And I wasn't fazed by it. It was, the one thing I will say about doing EMOMs is you should always expect something to go wrong, because it probably usually will. Anyway, it did go wrong. Nobody else knew, because I said to a couple of people, "Did you notice anything?" And they said, No. The set was really great. We enjoyed it, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. So you can actually update your software while you're actually playing it at a gig. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers now. Bye-bye.